In light of the decision made by the state of New York this week to legalize abortion up to birth, I just want to say that it's a pleasure to be in partnership with Pathway to Hope, to stand for life and to stand with the unborn and to be a voice with the voiceless. And so I'm so grateful for that partnership. And 5 years ago, something like that, we really set on an intentional journey of making sure that everybody that we were connected with in the community and globally, that we were driving deep partnerships. And so that just to hear that and for you to hear that is just been a blessing to see so many, because partnership looks like this. It doesn't look like us just writing a check to an organization. It looks like us getting our hands dirty, and so many of you are getting your hands dirty with our local partners and global partners. So thank you for being invested in that kind of a way. Thanks to technology, we were able to have church last week, so I hope you got to engage with the video. Instead of you coming here, I came to your house, and we launched this series called It's Personal, and it doesn't get any more personal than you watching me in your PJs, okay? So what a way to start the series. And this series is the first step to orient ourselves around the key focus for this year that I laid out what seems like 3 months ago, but was only 3 weeks ago on January 6th. So if you weren't here on that day, please go back and watch January 6th, because I recapped our vision. I shared some key wins for 2018, and I shared an initiative that we're keying in on for 2019. And I also shared with you two very important dates coming up, February 7th and February 10th. We're calling these Reveal Night. That's a Thursday night and a Sunday night. Please pick one and come to that. Our leadership spent much of last year working on the how of our vision. How are we going to double our kingdom impact in this community? How are we going to get more broken people in this building to experience the unconditional love of Jesus? And so we launched 3 services. That was step 1 leading into that vision, but it is not the end-all solution. And we believe that God has given us step 2. And so on February 7th and on February 10th, we're going to lay out to you what that step is. So please don't miss it. You want to be here for that. It's going to be a great night of worship and vision casting and celebrating our history, as well as looking into our future. So you can RSVP to that by going on our website, click the events tab at the top, and it'll lead you to that page. But I shared a key focus with you 3 weeks ago for 2019 that we are rallying ourselves around, and it was this: one matters, so one is the mission. One matters, so one is the mission. God is all about the one. God is crazy about the one. God is relentless in his pursuit and in his love for the one. And we talked about, the parable of the lost sheep, the story that Jesus tells of a shepherd who has 100 sheep, and one of them wanders off, and he doesn't throw a party because 99 are still with him. He leaves them on a hillside, and he goes and he looks for that one. And when he finds the one, that's when he throws the party. And so we threw down the gauntlet a couple of weeks ago, and we challenged you to make this the year that you lead your one into a relationship with Jesus, that you would go find your one. When you think about the people in your relational orbit, who's the person that keeps coming to mind for you that needs to experience the unconditional love of Jesus? See, as soon as I say that, somebody pops in. And the reason that somebody pops in is because God is trying to get your attention to share the hope of Jesus with that person. And we had you write your one's name on a card around the room and then drop it in a box. And so if you weren't here that day, didn't get a chance to do that, you'll have the chance to do that after the service. There's tables all around the room in the front and the back. Write down your one on that card, drop it in the box, write another card with your one's name and take it with you, put it up so you can pray over them for 2019. But we're going to be doing something with those names on Reveal Night. So this is a corporate challenge that we're all coming together to participate in as a church, but it's a very personal challenge because your one is your one. It's nobody else's one. Your one is your one. So this is a personal mission. And if everyone reaches one, like we double our impact, literally. That doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to come to Centerpoint. This isn't about Centerpoint. This is about the kingdom of God. This is about helping people find and follow Jesus, whether they live next door or whether they live in another state. Doesn't matter. According to a study done by Lifeway Research, 80% of Christians believe they have a personal responsibility to share their faith, yet only 19% of them have actually done it. So let's take 10 Jesus followers. Out of 10 Jesus followers, 8 of them have a personal conviction. Out of the 8, only 1.5 of them have actually lived it out. And so all of that boils down to this number that I want us to sit with for a little bit, 85%. 85%. That is the percentage of believers, of Jesus followers, who have never shared their faith with another person. That is not good news. And we have good news to share. But the bad news is we're not sharing the good news. And so this is a number that we want to change as a church. We don't want this number to be true of Centerpoint because we have a responsibility. Every Christ follower has a responsibility to share their faith with other people because Jesus is the hope of the world. Now, a more recent Barna survey had similar findings, and when asked why Christians don't share their faith, the editor-in-chief, Roxanne Stone, said this: most Christians are busy with other things, the day-to-day of normal life, jobs, kids, budget, sports. None of that's bad. But the unfortunate reality is that most adults don't seem to connect their everyday experiences with their faith. Like the reason that we don't share our faith is because we don't carry our faith into the day-to-day. We live these compartmental lives. And so for many believers, their faith is summed up by a Sunday event rather than a daily experience. It's a transactional faith. All right, we come in on Sunday, we make a transaction, and we leave unchanged. And we come in next Sunday, and we make a transaction, and we leave unchanged. If you are not a Christian, okay, you're just kind of searching this thing out. You're trying to figure it out. You've heard a lot of great things about Jesus, but one of your hang-ups is Christians. This is why. Because you've encountered Christians who have a transactional faith. Their faith doesn't define them. And so they don't live out the principles that you've heard about. They don't live out the ethic of love that you've heard people talking about that Jesus lived out day to day. See, we keep our faith wrapped up. It's kind of like this Tide Pod here. Like there's a lot of power in this little packet, but we don't actually get the full benefit. Like we add it when it's convenient, and we take it out when it's inconvenient. So when we go to work, for example, we may leave our faith at home so that we don't have to check with our moral compass when we make decisions that might affect the bottom line. And we get home and we put our faith in and we pray with our family and thank God for a productive day. Or we go out to dinner with our unchurched friends. We take it out so that the conversation can flow freely and not awkwardly, because it can get awkward to talk about Jesus and to talk about church. So we just leave that out. We get home, we put it back in, and we talk about how we really need to invite them to church. Or we go shopping and we take it out because we don't want our faith to get in the way of a purchase that we know that our checking account can't handle, but our credit card can. And then we go home and we put our faith in and we grab a 20 to drop in the offering box at church. See, for so many people, Jesus is somebody they've added onto their life, but not somebody they've integrated into their life. And here's the thing about additions, they can be subtracted. But something that is integrated, it can't be separated. Like it just becomes a part of you. Like when you go all in with Jesus and you let Jesus have all of you there is to have, He mixes His DNA with you and it reaches into every corner of your being, and nothing is left untouched. Nothing is left unchanged. And now your faith is just part of you. It cannot be separated. And so in conversations with other people, Jesus comes out of you in the form of grace and truth. You know why? Because that's what's in you. When you're backed into a moral corner at work, Jesus comes out of you in the form of integrity and honesty. You know why? Because that's what's in you. Like when you see that shiny new thing that promises to make your life better, but you know that you really don't need and really can't afford, Jesus comes out of you in the form of self-control and self-discipline and sacrifice and self-denial and commitment. You know why? Surely. That's what's in you. You can't separate it. It's part of you. You've gone all in with Jesus, and Jesus has impacted every area of your life. And so you don't even have to think about it because you've just been transformed from the inside out. And that's what this series is about. It is about moving us from a transactional faith to a transformational faith. When you encounter the incredible love and mercy and grace of Jesus, something should be different about you. And when we embrace this simple yet radical idea of what it means to love God with our whole being and to really love our neighbors as ourselves and to make disciples who make disciples, man, it changes your makeup. It changes your spiritual DNA. And so our key text for this series is the Great Commandment in Mark chapter 12. The Great Commandment is in Matthew's Gospel and Luke's Gospel. We're using Mark's account of this Gospel. And so in chapter 12, this is the way this conversation goes. One of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating, because they were debating about something prior to this, about marriage and who's, this brother married his brother's wife because he died, and now this brother died and his brother took, her as his wife. So whose wife is she going to be at the resurrection? Very complicated scenario. And Jesus just wraps it up by saying, hey, there will be no marriage in the resurrection. So in case you were wondering that, you got that free today as well. So that's the conversation they were having. And he noticed that Jesus had given them a good answer. So he asked him, of all the commandments, which is the most important? The most important one, answered Jesus, is this: Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. And the second is this, meaning the second is the same as the first. That's what it says in the Greek. Love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. Now, there's not one part of our personhood that's not touched in this statement. My heart, my soul, my mind, my strength, my neighbor. Doesn't get any more personal than that. So last week we looked at what it was like to love the Lord your God with all your heart. If you didn't watch that, go back. It's on our website and take a look at that. But today we're going to focus on the second part of this. What does it mean to love God with all of your soul? Now the heart is the center of who we are, but the soul is the totality of who we are. We are defined by our soul. It's the part of our being that bears the thumbprint of God. It's the deepest part of who we are. It's the only part of us that nobody else can see except for God. Like your heart is on display. We talked about that a little bit in that video. Your heart is on, people can see what's in your heart. It just kind of comes out. But your soul, it's the secret part of you. The soul is what integrates all the other parts of our personhood to bring them together to form who we are. C.S. Lewis said, you don't have a soul. You are a soul. And you have a body. Now, one of these days, your body's going to fall apart. It's what happens when you turn 45, as I've discovered. You will start to lose some strength, right? And one day you're going to get out of your truck. You're going to hit some black ice. And it's going to be awkward, and you're going to fall, and it's going to take days to recover. Okay, if you were driving down 747 on Wednesday about 8:15 a.m. and you happen to see some guy step out of his truck and just completely wipe out, it wasn't me. One of these days you may lose your mind. Okay, some of you are already there, right? It's already happened. Our bodies and our minds are all temporary, but the soul is eternal. The soul is the part of us that God made to live forever. It was never to have an ending, and for most people, their soul is the most neglected part of their being. Like we give attention to our bodies. We spend a lot of money to look good. Women will spend an average of $17,000 over their lifetime on beauty products. Americans spend $60 billion a year on gym memberships and weight loss products trying to help them shed pounds and gain muscle because we take an interest in our bodies. We invest in our bodies. We invest in our minds. The U.S. spends more on education than any other developed nation. When you decided where you were going to live, odds are you looked at the school district and you considered that before you considered how long it would take you to get to and from work. Because a quality education for your child was worth an extra hour or so in the car over the next 4 years. 2/3 of high school graduates will go on to college. They'll spend anywhere from $40,000 to $140,000 on average, some of them a lot more, on tuition and fees. Many of them will go on to get postgraduate degrees. None of that is bad. Do not hear that. I have a master's degree, not because I needed it, but because I wanted to keep learning, to keep my mind sharp. I exercise, all right, mostly because I like to eat ice cream. That's if I'm just being honest with you. I'm just illustrating the point that we are willing to make trades for the things that we value. We are willing to spend money on the things that we value. We are willing to make sacrifices on the things that we value. But most people give little attention to the thing that is most valuable within us, and that's the soul. Our soul care doesn't exceed much beyond an hour on Sunday, dependent on the weather, and this is how we lose our soul, by prioritizing all the things that enhance our mind and our body and our heart, and by running after the pleasures of this world instead of storing up treasures in heaven. And so Jesus addresses this issue in a conversation with his disciples in Matthew chapter 16. It says this: "From that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and on the third day be raised to life." Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. "Never, Lord," he said, "this shall never happen to you." Now, this sounds super noble of Peter. Peter is one of Jesus' guys. He's one of the 12 closest followers, one of his 12 disciples. Just a few verses earlier, Jesus asked his disciples who people are saying that he is, and they give some answers. And then he says, "Who do you say that I am?" And Peter had the right answer. He said, "You're the Christ. You're the Messiah. You are the Son of the living God. You're the one who was sent here to redeem us." And then Jesus compliments him. He says, "You got the answer right, and you didn't discover this on your own. This was revealed to you by the Lord." Peter loved Jesus. There's no doubt about that. But Jesus reveals something in Peter that nobody knew was there, perhaps not even Peter. Verse 23. Jesus turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan." This is not a compliment. Okay, this is like if Jesus calls you Satan, something's going on. And he explains, "You're a stumbling block to me." Why? Because you do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns. And here's what he means by that. This isn't about Jesus. This is about Peter. Peter doesn't want Jesus to go to a cross. Peter doesn't want Jesus to die, because losing Jesus means losing his position. Peter isn't focused on God's kingdom. He's focused on his own kingdom. And his own kingdom does not have a cross. All right, remember that they believe Jesus to be a political savior. That Jesus is going to restore Israel to its right position as a political power in the world. And Peter is like, right next to Jesus. He's the right-hand man. So Jesus has made him very popular. And if Jesus dies, there is no future for Peter. In fact, after the crucifixion and the resurrection, Peter went back to fishing. He went back to doing what he had always done. Now, Jesus had risen from the dead. He had seen Jesus with his own eyes, but he had still not put this whole thing together. We don't see that transformation until Acts chapter 2, when the Holy Spirit comes on Peter and he gets this courage like he's never had. But in between then and that point and Acts chapter 2, he's not figured this thing out yet. And so he just goes back to fishing. See, without a future, we always go back to our past. That's human nature. If we don't know what to do next, we just go back to doing what we had always done. It's what happens to every disintegrated soul. It's why you and I have a tendency to go back to our old ways, because we tend to forget that there's a kingdom that's not ours, and there's a cross that we're called to bear. And so Jesus addresses this issue. He goes on in verse 24. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul?" Jesus is not talking specifically about eternity in this passage. He's talking about the current reality. He's diagnosing a soul that is disconnected from the Creator. So quick word study here. The word life in this passage, whoever wants to save his life will lose it. The word translated as life is the Greek word suke, which means soul. And it's often used as a reflexive pronoun, and those are words that end in self. So myself, yourself, himself, herself. So Jesus literally says, "For what will it profit a man to gain the whole world, yet forfeit himself?" What would it profit, what good will it be for a woman to gain the whole world, yet forfeit herself? He's not warning of losing one's life. He's warning of losing one's self. He says, what's the point in running after all the stuff of the world if you just lose who you are, if you forget that you are a child of the King, if you completely lose your identity, if you have everything but yourself? What have you really gained? And so you succeeded at becoming the head of the company, but you failed at being the head of your family. You gave yourself to a title, but you gained nothing. You make six figures, but you can't even give 3. You gave yourself up for money, and you gained nothing. You can spend your whole life looking out for yourself, and the paradox that Jesus is talking about here is that when you look out for yourself, you lose yourself because your soul is sold out to something other than Jesus. See, there's an insatiable desire within our soul. We're constantly craving something, and that's by design. God made us to crave. God created us to crave. Thomas Aquinas said that the neediness of the soul is a pointer to God. The reason that we're never satisfied is because God created us to have this constant desire for Him. But because of the fall and because of sin, we try to satisfy that desire with something other than God. It's not our desire. That's a bad thing. Desire is a good thing. God put that in you. It's what we run after to satisfy it. And we do it with a number of things. Our soul needs to be satisfied, but when we try to satisfy it ourselves, it leads to dissatisfaction. John Ortberg wrote a book a few years ago called Soul Keeping. He says this: the soul is a little like the king on a chessboard. The king is the most limited of chess pieces. It can only move one square at a time, but if you lose the king, game over. Your soul is vulnerable because it's needy. And if you meet those needs with the wrong things, game over, or at least game not going well. Now, if we're just being gut level honest today, some of us would have to admit that the game is not going well. Because we're trying to satisfy the desires of our soul with something other than God. This is the point that Paul is making in Romans chapter 1 when he describes the very core issue with humanity. He said this sums everything up. They exchanged the truth about God for a lie, and worshiped and served created things rather than the Creator. All right? And they is we. They is we. We've exchanged the truth about God for a lie. Our identity comes from the Father. Like we are stamped in the image of God, and therefore our satisfaction can only fully come out of a relationship with Him. That's the truth. But we've exchanged it for a lie. We exchange it for false gods. We exchange it for surrogate fathers. Surrogate is a substitute. And we all do this. Every one of us do this. When the game is not going well, where do you go? Just think about that. When there's something not going well in your life, you're struggling, you're discouraged, you're disappointed, where do you go? I tend to stress eat. That's where I go. That's why it's called comfort food. And maybe like me, like when you're stressed out, like that's what you do. You go for food. Some of you bury yourself in work because work gives you this sense of value, but it's a surrogate. It's not the real thing, it's a substitute. Your value comes from your heavenly Father. Some of you drink to take the edge off, like it might quench the thirst, but it leaves the soul parched. It's a surrogate. You can only be fully satisfied by your heavenly Father. Some of you stuff yourself with stuff, like you shop, new clothes, new toys, new cars. All of that stuff makes you feel good for the moment, and then you get the credit card bill, and you don't feel so good anymore. See, welcome to America, the land of the overweight and workaholic, and the home of the addicted and the financially strapped. When our soul is restless and when our soul is unsettled, that's where a lot of us tend to go. And the Bible has a word for that, and it's this: idolatry. Idolatry. When our soul feels a need, it is pointing us to God. But instead of running after our Heavenly Father, we run after all these other things. We run after a surrogate father. And idolatry is simply this: it is the soul meeting its need with something other than God. And the problem is not in our consumption. It's not that we consume food or that we consume alcohol or that we consume stuff or we consume work. None of those things are bad things in moderation. It's not the consumption. It's the overconsumption. And the overconsumption is usually the result of an undernourished soul. The soul is trying to meet its need with something other than God. And so in today's narcissistic society, we're taught that self is most important. If it feels good to you, do it. If it helps you, do it. If you like you, do it. And do it a lot. Be yourself. Indulge yourself. Enjoy yourself. But what did Jesus say? Deny yourself. Deny yourself. And that is a hard and heavy statement to hear when self-preservation is our utmost concern. Our inclination is always towards self. And we have to remember that that's what ruined the soul in the first place. Sin entered the world because of self-preservation. Eve exchanged the truth of God with a lie. She no longer believed that God had their best interest in mind, that God was going to supply everything they would ever need. She felt like God was holding out on them. That was a lie. And here we are. And until I remove myself from the center of my life and give the Lord Jesus that position, I will never be able to love the Lord, my God, with all of my soul, because my soul is not sold out to Him. And here's the process it takes to having a soul that is sold out to Him. We gotta reject the lies that we've believed. We got to reject the surrogates that we tend to run to and the idols that we tend to worship. And since indulging yourself and fulfilling yourself and promoting yourself and enjoying yourself hasn't worked, I'm just suggesting today, let's try denying ourselves. And don't misunderstand self-denial. That sounds like such a dirty word. But it's not a refusal of the pleasures and joys of life. Scripture says, the Bible says, 1 Timothy 6:17, Paul says to Timothy, God richly provides everything for your enjoyment. God richly provides everything for your enjoyment. Our Father wants good things for us. The Christian life was never meant to be a miserable experience. That is a lie. Self-denial is not about rejecting the pleasures of life. It's about removing yourself from the center of life. Dallas Willard has written a book called Renovation of the Heart. If you want to grow in your faith, pick up a couple of Dallas Willard books, and he will challenge your spiritual equilibrium. But in Renovation of the Heart, he says this about the soul. Self-denial must never be confused with self-rejection, nor is it to be thought of as a painful and strenuous act. It is rather an overall settled condition of life in the kingdom of God, better described as death to self. Not my will, but yours be done. In this, and in this alone, lies the key to the soul's restoration. The ruined life is not to be enhanced, but replaced. We must simply lose our life. I love this. That ruined life about which most people complain so much anyway. It's only when you step out of the center of your own life that you begin to really enjoy your life. And so for too many of us, we treat Jesus like an update to our house when his aim was complete restoration and renovation. Updates are about changing a few things to make something look better, but a renovation is about gutting the entire thing to make it look completely different. And so, friends, Jesus doesn't want you to just be better. That's not his end-all goal, is for you to be better. His end goal is for you to be different, for you to be transformed. And when your soul is transformed and it is sold out to Jesus, you become different. And here's the thing, life becomes better. The soul was made by God, and it was made for God, and it was made to need God. It was made to run on God. We were made to enjoy God and thereby enjoy life. And too many of us get that backwards. We try to enjoy life first, and it just doesn't work. And you enjoy God, you will inevitably enjoy life. And Jesus makes it so simple. Whoever wants to save his life will lose it. Whoever loses his life for me will find it. And he gives us the answer to how to do that. Take up a cross daily. Now, the cross was, as you know, an instrument of death that would ultimately take his life. But the cross Jesus is referring to is not a cross of suffering. It's a cross of surrender. And what the Romans used as a means of death, God uses as a means of life. Discipleship cannot come. It does not come. It will not come without a cross. But that cross isn't about death. That cross is about new life, because whoever gives his life up for Jesus will find it. So let's just get personal for a second. Where are you? What is your soul running after? If you have never surrendered your soul to Jesus Christ, that is the first step into the kingdom of God. That is the first step to beginning to enjoy life to its fullest. And if that's a decision you want to make, we try to make that super simple here. You can talk to some folks down front after the service, but you can also text the word decision, especially if you're watching online. Text the word decision to this number, 513-466-1676, and one of our staff members will follow up with you and help you unpack what that means and to take the next step. So you think about that for the next few minutes as we're going to take communion together. We do this every week. We come to a table to take a piece of bread and a cup of juice to remember a king and to remember his cross. And it's a reminder that the cross he called us to take is a cross that leads to life, ultimately. See, Jesus took the cross physically. He just calls us to take it spiritually, and it changes everything. So as we take communion, just what do you need to strip away? What lie do you need to reject? What surrogate do you need to refuse? What idol do you need to stop worshiping today so that God can have all of you there is to have. Let's pray. Father, I just pray that you would shine a spotlight on our soul today. You would reveal to us where it's disconnected from you and your will, and that we would resolve that right here by the grace of Jesus. In his name.